As you may or may not know, growing your natural hair is not actually the struggle. The main struggle is length retention. So in this video, I'm going to be giving you things you can do to actually retain the length you grow. Hello and welcome to my channel. So if you clicked on this video, it means you're actually interested in finding out how to retain length. If you don't know what length retention is, it's basically the ability for you to retain the length that grows out of your hair. So knowing how to retain the length that grows out of your hair is actually very important, because it's like the main thing that is going to determine if you're going to see growth or if you're going to be stuck at a particular length for a certain period of time. That being said, the first thing you can do to make sure that you retain your length is moisturizing. As you discover sooner or later on my channel, I will be so focused on this point, moisturizing, because that is the one thing most people get wrong when they are trying to retain length or grow out their natural hair. So moisture is actually very important when it comes to length retention, because the drier your hair, the easier it's going to be for your hair to break, and the more difficult it's going to be for you to manage your hair. So you might want to learn how to moisturize, and obviously I'm going to be making many more videos explaining how to moisturize different hair types, porosities and densities. So just stay tuned and watch out for that video when I upload it. The next thing you can do to actually ensure that you retain the length you are growing is to reduce manipulation. Now I know we are so used to always trying to do one style or the other with our hair, but the truth is natural hair actually loves to be left alone. So if you learn how to just do the minimum when it comes to manipulating your hair, then you're going to realize that you retain more length over time. But on the contrary, if you decide to style your hair like every day, comb it every day, detangle every day, you're going to notice that you actually lose a lot of hair each time you try to manipulate your hair in one way or the other. So the best thing you can do to actually make sure that you retain as much length as possible is to reduce the rate at which you manipulate your hair. My next point is get trims only when necessary. Now I know there are so many people who are going to tell you trim your hair after 2 months, trim your hair after 3 months for your hair to grow. You have to understand that trimming your hair doesn't mean your hair is going to grow. You're actually trimming your hair only when you have dead ends. So if you don't have dead ends, there's going to be no need for you to trim your hair. You don't have to go trimming your hair every month, every after 2 months, because that's basically just going to make you lose more hair and not actually retain as much length as you would like to. Now, trimming your hair permits your hair to be much more manageable and actually reduces the occurrence of single strand knots in your hair. So overall, you'll be able to retain more length when you don't have dead ends. That being said, trimming is important, but don't go and do over trimming. You actually have to study your hair to be able to identify when is the right time to trim and how to go about trimming. I'm going to make videos explaining all of this. The next thing you can actually do to help you retain as much length as possible is keeping a clean scalp. Now, even though a lot of people have actually moved towards cleaning and cleansing their scalp maybe once a week or at least twice a month, there's still some people out there who believe that you need to have dirty hair for your hair to grow or for you to retain length. And to be honest here, that's not true. Because if you have a dirty scalp, that's going to most likely cause you so many scalp problems, like maybe itchy scalp, dandruff, and so many other scalp issues. So now you have scalp issues, you're constantly going to be having shedding, is constantly going to be breaking because your hair is not healthy enough to produce its own natural oils that actually nourish your hair follicles and your hair shafts. Also, keeping dirty hair actually is going to make your scalp itchy, and your scalp is always itchy, you're constantly going to be having your hands in your hair. And like I said, if your hand is always going to your hair, in the course of going to your hair, it's going to reduce the moisture which you have struggled so hard to get into your hair, and hence leave your hair dry and fragile. So if you actually want to retain as much length as possible, you have to learn how to keep a clean scalp always. Don't believe what people say when they tell you, oh, your hair has to be dirty for it to grow. They kept their hair dirty for 6 months or for 2 months without washing it, and it grew a certain amount of inches. That's not true. So please learn to keep a clean scalp if you actually want to retain as much length as possible. My next step, which most people actually neglect, but is something that is really important when you're actually trying to retain length and grow your natural hair out, is covering your hair before going to bed, preferably in a satin or silk fabric. Now, the reason why I'm talking about satin or silk is because they're not cotton based and they don't actually absorb moisture from your hair. Also, they're very smooth, so they don't cause friction with your hair, hence your hair is very safe in these two materials. Many people actually don't realize how important it is to cover your hair before going to bed. Now, what happens when you go to bed without covering your hair? Your hair actually is gonna be rubbing through the pillows and the bed sheets throughout the night. Apart from the friction it's going to cause to your hair, it's also going to absorb the moisture in your hair and hence leave your hair dry. You all know that when your hair is dry, it's very easy for it to break off, and our goal here is obviously to retain as much length as possible. So you want to cover your hair before going to sleep. Believe me, it's very important, and never should you think it's not as important as other reasons, because yeah, so many people buy bonnets but they never get to wear it. If you actually don't like covering your hair before going to bed, or you're afraid that it's just going to slide out during the night, then you might want to invest in getting silk or satin pillowcases. That way you can actually go to bed without actually tying your hair or wearing some sort of bonnet. All the same, if you want to retain as much length, try never to go to bed without covering your hair, or at least sleeping on a silk or satin pillowcase. Now, another thing you can actually do to help you retain the length you grow out is getting protein treatments at least once every month. Protein treatments are actually very important because they actually strengthen and restore your hair. They provide like some sort of protective barrier over every single hair strand, which actually permits your hair to withstand certain pressure and tensions which we intentionally or unintentionally put on our hair. So getting a protein treatment therefore comes in handy if you're really trying to retain as much length and minimize breakage as much as possible. Protein treatments are super important, but you don't want to exaggerate it. Just like trimming your hair, you don't want to overdo the protein treatments because it also has a side effect. Once a month is like the average, and it's actually going to be good for everybody to get a protein treatment at least once a month. The next thing you can actually do to retain as much length as possible is try to reduce tension on your scalp and on your hair. Now, I think we're used to having these very sleek hairstyles, very sleek braids, very sleek this and that, and then some people still have the misconception that the tighter your braids are or the tighter your tresses are, the faster your hair is going to grow. Please, if you're watching this video today and you're someone who likes tight tresses, then you actually have to take a step back, especially if length retention is your goal. If you're trying to retain length, you want to stay away from too tight tresses and a lot of tension on your scalp and hair in general, because when you apply a lot of tension on your scalp, it's going to actually cause your hair to fall out in that area, and if you continue doing that over a certain period of time, you're probably going to kill even the hair follicle in that particular area. The next thing you might want to do in order to retain as much length as possible is always learn to put your hair in protective styles. Now, when we talk about protective styles, we're not just talking about box braids and knotless braids and cornrows. Okay, we're talking about like a wide range of things you can do with your hair. Like actually what I have now on my hair is a protective style. Why I have this particular protective style is actually because I'm doing an experiment to find out if rice water actually works or not. So I'll be doing rice water straight for 1 month, no other product on my hair during this 1 month. So I'm going to tell you guys if using rice water really makes your hair grow or not. That out of the way, anything that keeps your ends away and keeps your hands away from your hair is a protective style. So you can go ahead and choose from the variety of protective styles that exist. Learn to put your hair in protective styles that are going to actually help you keep your hands away from your hair, so your hair can do its own thing and grow, and then actually help you retain as much length as possible. The next thing you can actually do to make sure that you retain as much length as possible is actually to be patient with your hair. One thing most of us forget to know is our hair is very different from other hair types, and somehow our hair care routines are also very different from other hair types. So given that natural hair is very curly and coily, it also requires some time to detangle, wash, and re-moisturize. So the reason I'm asking you to be patient is if you want to retain as much length as possible, you actually only manipulate your hair or try to do 1 or 2 things with your hair only when you have enough time to do it. So you don't want to be in a rush when you're trying to style your hair or detangle it or wash it. Mainly because our hair is coily and curly, like I already said, and it's always going to be entangled with each other. So if you're actually in a haste when trying to detangle your hair, for example, you're going to actually realize that you just rip out a lot of your hair because you're in a haste. Whereas if you're actually having a lot of time and you're patient with your hair, you accept the fact that your hair is coily and curly and is constantly going to be mixed with each other, then you're going to be much more patient when taking care of your hair. You're going to take your time to feel the knots in between and really separate them one after the other. It's very important for you to be very patient with your hair whenever you're trying to deal with it, because during a very short period of just manipulating your hair in a haste or not actually giving enough time to detangle the hair gently as it requires you to, you may actually take away all the length you have been retaining for a long period of time. So it's very, very, very important. Though you might see it as a not too important reason, it's actually very important for you to pay attention and be very, very patient when doing whatever it is you're doing with your hair. The next thing you can actually do to retain as much length, as we all know, is minimize the use of heat and chemicals in your hair, because heat and chemicals basically just make your hair fragile and weak and hence vulnerable and easy to break off. For anybody who is trying to retain as much length, you cannot afford to be using heat and chemicals in your hair all the time. The next very important step as well that you need to consider in order to retain as much length as possible is to pick and choose your hair tools very carefully. Not every brush or every comb or every hair accessory that you see out there in the market is adapted to Afro textured hair. So like the type 4 hair, it's not every hair tool that is going to actually be good for your hair type. So some hair tools and hair brushes and combs might actually do your hair more harm than good. If you're really trying to retain as much length, then the first thing is you're supposed to learn how to finger detangle, which is like very easy and actually the best way anybody will recommend for you to detangle your hair, mainly because you get to feel the knots in your hair and you're able to go in one after the other and detangle those knots gently in order to minimize breakage and hence retain more length. If you must use detangling brushes and combs and all those things, go for the ones with a wider tooth, which will actually glide through your curly and coily hair. So if you have made it to the end of my video, please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed my content. And if you have any questions or any worries with regards to how to grow your natural hair, retain length, and whatever struggles you're going through with your natural hair or your relaxed hair, please leave your comments down in the comment section and I'm going to answer all those questions. Thank you and see you in the next video.